The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to another QuoteWerks 101, our regular series of short presentations giving you hints and tips for getting the most out of QuoteWerks. And in this session, I'm going to cover how to import data into QuoteWerks. So, for example, you may get pricing information from a supplier of yours in an Excel format. How do you get that easily into QuoteWerks? Of course, you don't need to type these products prices in one by one manually. QuoteWerks includes a really easy to use import feature. Hello, my name is Tim Wilmot and my company Wizard Systems. We're a specialist CRM systems provider, supplier who help mainly small and mid-sized companies improve their sales productivity, marketing and customer service through the use of simple and affordable solutions like QuoteWerks. This presentation will be about 10 minutes or so in duration, just an overview of the import feature, not meant to be in-depth training. As such, my company Wizard Systems offers lots of different help services around QuoteWerks to help you get the most out of the system. Please contact us for more information on that. Now, the audio part of the presentation is one way only. If you've got any questions, please type that into the question box on your meeting control panel, and I'll do my best to answer those at the end. Also, I'll give you an update on current QuoteWerks product news as of late September 2020. And this call is being recorded after the presentation. Those listening live, you will get an email from our system with a link to recording, and you can play that back, and it will be up on our YouTube channel as well. Just a quick mention about Wizard Systems. We are a long-standing supplier of QuoteWerks. We've been supplying it now for a couple of decades. Lots of implementations in different types of companies, and we provide the total service around QuoteWerks to make sure you get the most out of it. So we supply the software, upgrades, implementation, training, and help desk support. Okay, so let's get into QuoteWerks then and importing data, say from an Excel spreadsheet. Well, let's start with Excel first of all. So here is an example Excel spreadsheet with some pricing and product information on it. Typically, I guess you would get in row one the column headings, what the data in that column below, what the format of the data is, and then you've got row by row all of the physical data itself. So this would be the first thing to do, is particularly if you've not done this before, or you've not had this is the first time that you've had a spreadsheet from this source, is to visually check over it and make sure that in the columns there's common data types. So, for example, if you've got a column with monetary information in it, it does include numbers and not text. Don't worry about row number one. We can exclude that from the import when we go through it. So visually make sure that you've got the correct columns. Also that you've got some unique identifier as well. I've got a column here called SKU. Typically that's going to be the part number, of course. That's going to be a unique identifier of every product going into the QuoteWerks database, and any product database will need, ideally, it must have a unique identifier. I'll explain the importance of that very shortly. So that's step number one. Review the source data and just a quick sort of glance over it. In effect, you're preparing the data ready to import into QuoteWerks. Excuse the Latin here, I'm just using some sample data. So that's your Excel spreadsheet. Next step would be to make sure that you've got a verified backup of your QuoteWerks database. So let me pop into QuoteWerks. Make sure you've got a verified backup. Now there are different editions of QuoteWerks. Typically we support with QuoteWerks an access database format. So make sure you've got a backup of the MDB files, as they're called, the access database format files, which you'll see in Windows Explorer. Make sure you've got a backup of those. If you're using SQL, then there are a wide range of SQL backup features. We actually have one we actually showcased one in a presentation a week ago. SQL Backup and FTP.com, a free SQL backup utility, really easy to use, that will back up your QuoteWerks database and be able to restore it as well. So, verified backup done. Next, we're ready to import. So we can go to our products menu in QuoteWerks, and there we are. We've got Import Wizard, just basically a sequence of screens that will help you through the process of importing. So this is the first screen, prompting me for the file that I want to import. I should point out that back in Excel, you need to save your file as a CSV format. This is very, very typical of any database import. A CSV format file, that's comma separated value. So each of those columns that you saw, if you looked at this file, say in Word or Notepad, you'll be able to see all of the data in those cells delimited with a comma. Sometimes there may be quote marks or speech marks as well, but typically you have a comma splitting up all of those fields there. So I'm going to select my sample database that we saw just a while ago. There it is there, sample import CSV, and you've got their confirmation of these text file formats. You may have a .txt, but typically it's going to be .csv. Okay, let's open that file. Well, this is the second screen. This is where we're just really confirming the formatting of that file. You don't need to normally be too concerned with this if it is a true CSV file. QuoteWerks will have selected these options automatically for you. So we've got the line delimiter. How does QuoteWerks define one product from another product carriage return line feed? So they're on separate rows if we saw it back in Microsoft Excel. And then we've got the field delimiter, as I said, comma, separating those fields out. And this import, we've detected 5 fields in that import. Okay, so far so good. Click on next. Now this is the first important screen where we're going to be mapping. All database imports include mapping. We are mapping fields from the source file to fields in the target QuoteWerks. So this is where, this screen here, we've got, if you like, the primary fields that we must map, that would be important for any price product file. We've got a part number, description, cost price, selling price. Well, we've got a price and list price. You may be familiar with the concept of those in QuoteWerks, but very simply, I'm now going to click on the down arrow and match those incoming columns, if you like, those incoming fields to the correct location in QuoteWerks. So there's my SKU. Typically, that might be the vendor part number, possibly could be the manufacturer part number as well. Description, there's my description. Now, the actual names of the columns in Excel and the sequence of those columns does not matter. Even if you've got lots of columns in Excel that are not relevant to this import, doesn't matter. So we're just really going through this process here and selecting those different items. They can be called anything. There's cost price, So for example, price, I'm matching that to retail price. It's not actually called price in my source file, it's called retail price. We can click on the view data there to view that data as well, just to do a little bit of a double check that the integrity of that file. All right, so far so good. Now we'll click next again. There was another fifth field that was not present on that previous screen. So I've got in my Excel spreadsheet, I had a notes column, maybe a bit more information about that product, perhaps a bit more information beyond the product description. So there it is there. There isn't a little asterisk against it. It's not mapped at the moment. So on the left-hand side here, we've got all of my available QuoteWerks fields. On the right-hand side, we've got all of the available fields in the source file. So back on the left-hand side, I could scroll down, they're in alphabetical order, or I could just quickly press N for notes. There's the standard notes field in QuoteWerks, there it is there, and we could map those two together. There's my asterisk. I could view the data like I did before. I could view the data again just to do a quick visual check that everything looks pretty much all right. So click next again. We're nearly there. Where is this data going to go in? So you will have by default a primary source, a primary database called Our Products. You may have others, so you could select that there to make sure that the data goes into the right location, the right database file, the right price list. Next, bearing in mind in my Excel spreadsheet, in my row number 1 had the descriptions of the columns, descriptions of the fields. I don't want that imported. It's not earth-shatteringly important if it does accidentally go in, but for accuracy, I'm just going to say start from row number 2. Right, this section here, import mode, very, very important. This is why you need to make sure you've done a backup, a verified backup, because look at this first option here. Delete all existing products in the selected database and append the new products. Bit dangerous. Other more common options, perhaps they should be resequenced, but perhaps a more common option might be append the products to the existing file you're adding them on. Typically though, if you're regularly getting from this supplier, going back to my example, you're getting a price list from a supplier, maybe on a monthly basis, the supplier's prices are changing, they're adding new products all the time. And you're getting on a monthly basis an updated Excel file from them, then QuoteWerks allows you to regularly take that file and bring it into QuoteWerks. It will update existing products and it will append new products. How does it find an existing product to update? Well, going back to what I mentioned earlier, the importance of that SKU file, the importance of the unique identifier in your database. So there's my SKU. I'm going to map that in QuoteWerks to, say, the vendor part number. And there's some other map fields that I may want to update there where I do find a match. So that's quite an important thing there. Just consider the options, a few dangerous ones, or a dangerous one there, but be very, very careful that you're familiar with all of these. Maybe even do a little sample import as I'm doing here, and then you can quickly remove them manually once you've done a little sort of training session to yourself. Okay, click next. Now I can save, we're there now, I can save this for later use. So typically you would do that where you are getting the same format file from the same source on a regular basis, then it would save you time. You don't need to go through all those previous screens. You could save time by recalling that existing import template. Well, I'm going to select no, start the import. Job done. the import is completed, I could see a little notes file just to confirm there. There we are. Well, I had 3 products in my sample file. They weren't in this product file. So as you can see here, they've been added to the database. If I just close that down there, and click on products, let's see if we can find in the vendor part number here. Let's just sort that and just scroll down here. They started with QR, those codes. There we are, those 3 products that we just imported in Latin very quickly, easily in your QuoteWerks database. So there you are, a very easy import from an Excel spreadsheet, saving it as a CSV file, making sure you've got a backup of your system, a verified backup of your system, and then going through that import wizard, mapping the fields, considering the append, update scenarios, and then checking that log file, checking the file that everything's gone through as expected. So I hope that was of interest to you. Those listening live now, if you've got any questions concerning this feature, I'd be happy to answer those for you. Yes, hi, Gary. So first question from Kathy. What if you make a mistake in the import process? Well, if it's that's a good question. I guess if it's there's no edit undo. If you've made a mistake, you've either got to backtrack or start again. So that's where that backup was of vital importance. If it's a small mistake, maybe you could manually rectify it. If it was just a description or one product missed out or whatever, possibly you could do that. But best thing to do is really restore from a backup. So log all your QuoteWerks users out of the system and then restore from a backup from where you were. But make sure you do a practice. A practice will certainly help you in this process, in being familiar with all the options. Marcel, is there a minimum import? If you mean fields or data, or there's no minimum as regards number of rows in that Excel spreadsheet. If you're talking about columns, well, I suppose the bare minimum would be that, in my example, that SKU column, a part number. But typically, you're going to have a product part number. You're going to have a product description. You're going to have a cost price, possibly. You're certainly going to have a selling price. So I would have thought the minimum, realistically, would be part number, description, selling price, as an example. Geraldine, what's a good way of backing up data? Well, just going back to what I mentioned, if you're using the Excel, if you're using, the Access database format, that can be backed up by Windows Explorer, or if you're using SQL, use a good quality SQL backup feature, and that will allow you to verify your backup. Question from Gary, how do I check if I'm backing up this data once imported? How do I check up if I'm backing up this data? You must do a backup of the data before you do the import, and some utilities, some backup utilities will allow you to verify that backup to make sure it's exact match. So you've got to be familiar with whatever backup process you're doing, verify you've got the backup and verify the location of that backup as well. So whether it's going to an online storage or going to a USB memory stick or some other device, just verify that you've got that there. And then once imported, yes, you could do another backup, and some utilities will allow you to do a full backup or an incremental backup, just backing up the data that's changed since the last backup. So depending on the backup utility you're using there, Gary, that would dictate how you check those things. Right, don't think there's any more questions coming through. Thanks, those of you that are listening live for those questions there. Well, so we're in sort of still semi-lockdown. We're actually starting to offer training. In fact, we do have a company in for training in our offices today in Bristol. We've got a couple of training rooms. We're all very COVID secure. We've got our NHS COVID-19 QR code check-in capability. Our trainers are wearing face shields. So we're all very much COVID compatible at Wizard Systems if you want to consider coming to our Bristol location for QuoteWerks training. But if not, we're doing all our training online, which we have actually been doing for many, many years now, very effectively and very interactively. So please contact us for details on any form of QuoteWerks training, customization, and so on. The latest version of QuoteWerks as of late September 2020 is version 5.5. And then within the version, you've got different builds. The latest build is 5.22. If you go to the QuoteWerks website, QuoteWerks.com, and click on updates, you better see the full story behind these versions and exactly what new features and fixes are in these releases. The only way of getting updates to QuoteWerks is by taking out an upgrade maintenance program, or UMP for short, which you can get from Wizard Systems, a low-cost annual fee which allows you to access any updates from QuoteWerks as they become available through the year. And we do showcase these different releases here on our regular weekly sessions, and also QuoteWerks on their YouTube channel as well. They do feature a bit more in depth the ins and outs of the new versions. So that's it, me done for this week's session on how to import from an Excel file into QuoteWerks. If you've got any ideas for future topics that would be of interest to the QuoteWerks community, then please drop me a line. My name again is Tim Wilmot. The company is Wizard Systems. There's my email address, tim@wizard-systems.com. Please go up to our YouTube channel there, do a search for Wizard Systems, or one word. You'll see a whole load of other CRM and QuoteWerks videos to entertain you. But we'll catch up with you same time next week for another QuoteWerks topic. Thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye.